Hello and welcome to BeamNG Drive. I'm davidinark. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. Wait, this isn't BeamNG. You're right. This is Paperspace. I was wondering what it would be like to try and rent space on a cloud server and run BeamNG in that space. Now, there are several options available to folks who want to set this up, but I decided to start with Paperspace just to pick one of them and see what happens. So when you first sign up, you have several options here with the light blue border at the bottom. The light blue border simply means that they are CPU only, basically with a built-in GPU. We'll see how that pans out here in just a minute. The ones with the green borders, you have to actually ask to be upgraded to those. So I'm going to start with the highest end CPU based PC that I can start with. And once you pick your machine, then you get storage. So you get 50 gigs of storage. Then you can come down here and you can name your machine. By the way, you can like upgrade your package or whatever. This is not a sponsored thing. I'm just trying Paperspace as a way to see how well it performs for gaming with something such as BeamNG Drive. There are some other options here. One is this auto shutdown. By default, it's set for a day, but I'm doing the hourly plan. I'm not going to pay for 24 hours if my machine doesn't shut down. I would rather, if it's idle for an hour, I'm not doing anything with it. You can shut it down. In some circumstances, you'd want it to be running in the background, but not for what I'm doing. So anyway, there you go. Once you have all that stuff selected, then you just scroll to the bottom and you tell it, hey, I'm ready to make a machine. And then this is a multi-step process. So it creates the instance of the Windows 10 environment, but then it has to provision it. And I will tell you that takes forever. I don't know why it takes so long. I've provisioned VMs before and it takes forever, but eventually you end up in this Windows 10 Paperspace environment. And so what I did here was I fired up Chrome, which was actually pre-installed, which I thought that was kind of nice. And then I'm just going to run out to steampowered.com. I'm going to download Steam. And I was kind of curious to see, how long it would take to download, how long it would take to install. I have to tell you, it took no time at all to download. Now, I will tell you why, because with this platform, you get virtual 1 gig connection down and almost a gig up. I mean, it is fast on the virtual machine. So at that point, it's a matter of how fast can that virtual machine show the screen to you, because really that's all we're doing. This Paperspace computer is actually running in the Chrome browser that is on my PC. So once I have Steam installed, then of course log in, give permission, all that kind of stuff. And so we come in here and start to download BeamNG Drive. So that's about 5 gigs worth of downloads, and between provisioning the space on the machine for the files and downloading it, I think it was about 6 minutes maybe. I don't know where you live and what kind of speed you have, but being able to download BeamNG in 6 minutes was insane to me, man. It was just absolutely crazy. So anyway, it starts to download here, and there were a couple of network hiccups. It was kind of weird, but that was on my end, so it's my internet provider, so that was that. Eventually, though, BeamNG downloads, and we start it up, and it loads pretty much like you'd expect BeamNG to load. So I'm going to go ahead and make it windowed full screen here, basically, and check in on some of the options. As you can see, it's in 1080p by default, and I really don't have an option to change that here, which is fine. So we're going to go into free roam, and we're just going to pick the grid map and fire this up. Now, one of the things to consider, one of the things to think about, is that you have to remember this is a CPU-based virtual machine, a Windows 10 instance, with, for all intents and purposes, a built-in onboard GPU. So we're going to take a look at some of those specs in just a minute here, but as you can see, it takes quite a while for things to spawn in the game. This is just grid map. It's very slowly coming into play. One of the issues that I had that you'll see here is that I don't know what's going on. If I try to right click with the mouse, hold my right mouse button down and spin the camera, all it did was spin me in circles. Like I couldn't move the camera. It was so bizarre. So I tried changing cameras by pressing C, and yeah, it'll cycle through the cameras, but I couldn't move a camera. It was, I don't know, it was just really weird. I don't know if it's because the controls in BeamNG were conflicting with the controls of the Paperspace environment, or what my computer thought should be happening. I don't know. However, here's where we run into some serious problems. As you can see, this thing is barely moving. I mean, the frame rates are horrid. In addition to the frame rates not being good, the input lag for this particular setup is atrocious. As I'm trying to accelerate, as I'm trying to steer, as I try to brake, the input lag is just absolutely awful. This is playing on one of the worst potato PCs I've ever played on. I mean, heck, even when I had my i7-4770, it was nowhere near this bad. In fact, I'm not even sure it was this bad when I figured out how to make it work on a Mac. So I thought maybe if I brought in a faster car, things would be better. No, not really. In fact, it's even more frustrating because you know the car is going faster than the game is indicating as you are trying to accelerate, as you're trying to steer. As a matter of fact, somewhere, I'd say somewhere right in about here, I guess it was. I don't know. At some point, I decided to steer toward that ramp. And there was just no way. There was no moving. So I just crashed it into the wall. Which, by the way, I couldn't pull up the node grabber. I held control and it would not show me any nodes. So, all right. Well, what I decided to do was run DXDiag so that I could get a feel for what this kind of looked like. And basically, this Xeon is the equivalent of an i5-2320 CPU. So that tells you how low end that is. And then the GPU is basically the equivalent of a GeForce GT 2200. Now, I know that's not exactly right, but looking at various benchmarks and getting a feel for about how things perform comparatively, that's as close as I could get. So that tells you right there, this is a very old, low-end type setup. So I quit this and decided, by the way, in order to unlock these ones with the green border at the bottom, you ask permission, and then I guess they grant you permission. I don't know. Anyway, they granted me permission, and so the video card for that is close to a GTX 1050 Ti. Again, not exactly, but they're close enough. And the difference is pretty noticeable. Now, this initial load getting into the game here was it still took a little time for it to figure out what it was doing. But the difference in gameplay is night and day. Oh my goodness. Here, the response is immediate. This was pretty much just like the experience of playing on my home PC. I mean, it really, really was. I could, hit the accelerator, I could steer, throw it in reverse, anything I wanted to do. Flying off the ramp there and landing, yes, I can do that too. But here, I slam on the brakes, I'm going to throw it in reverse, whip the vehicle around, stop, hit the accelerator. This is happening pretty much right in time with what I'm doing. It was honestly shocking. I was very surprised that this setup allowed me to play BeamNG pretty much the way I wanted to. Even changing cars. I mean, it was wherever I clicked, the mouse was there, and loading in, it loaded relatively fast. You see it gets a little hung up there with the final rear bumper for some crazy reason, but this is such a different experience from the other install that it amazes me truly that you could game in BeamNG virtually. Remember, this is not running on my computer. This is running on some server out in, I don't know, the East Coast USA somewhere, and it is running beautifully. Now, here I am in East Coast USA, and you can see that I am starting to get some serious pixelation. This is not YouTube compression. This is not the GeForce Experience recording. What you see on the screen is exactly what I saw on the screen. And the problem, I believe, has to do with my internet service provider. I have commented many times on how awful the internet is here. And I truly believe that this is what the issue I'm running into. I thought I would spawn in some traffic to see how the game handled running with traffic, and you can see the pixelation is horrible. I mean, it really is. It's very muddy, lots of pixels. It's having a hard time keeping up with what's going on. I don't believe that is the virtual machine having trouble. I believe the problem is that the virtual machine cannot pass the screens fast enough through my internet service provider to my screen in order to display it. Because if you look, when things are not moving, it looks beautiful. It looks fantastic. But as soon as you start moving and it has to redraw all those pixels, my connection to the internet just can't keep up. So I truly believe that if you've got a decent internet connection, unlike me, then as you are playing this, if this is something you want to get into, I believe you could definitely pull this off. And you don't have to have a high-end PC or anything in order to do this, because you're just running Chrome as your remote viewing. Here, I decided to reduce the resolution in-game to 720p, so it's being recorded at 1080p. That's why the big black border. And frankly, that is the full screen again of Chrome running Paperspace. But the game itself has been set up for 720p, and I got to tell you, this is actually doing a much better job of keeping up. You still see some pixelation, you still see some video degradation. Here, I took that 720 inset and I expanded it out just to fill the screen at the 1080p. I did this in editing, just to almost like a zoom in, just to see what it looked like. But I have to tell you, the difference between this and what I was doing and what I had seen before, man, night and day. This is actually playable. Sure, it's only 720, but it looks gorgeous in terms of the fact that this is not playing on my computer. I know I keep saying that, but it's just one of those things that you've got to wrap your brain around. I am basically remoted in through Google Chrome to this gaming machine and just having at it, man. Very cool stuff, man. Woo, that is awesome. All right, so here I decided to load up a mod, and I decided to use the ME-262 jet fighter, because why not, and bring it into East Coast USA to see how this virtual machine handled mods. And for the most part, it actually handles at least this one anyway, very well. Now, I will tell you that there were it takes a little getting used to because when you're playing on your own machine, you can actually hold several more keys down at the same time than you can in this virtual environment. All that really means is that I had to, let go of certain keys and push certain other keys. For example, like getting the landing gear up. Oh, and then trying to pull up there, it lost it. But when you're trying to pull the landing gear up, you have to kind of let go of all the other keys to pull the landing gear up, and then you can start to fly again. But even when you're flying, trying to maintain that control and using, pushing down to go up and, steering is a little tricky. And in fact, several times the game lost sync with what it was displaying to me. Again, I don't believe that's a fault of the game. I believe that is a fault of my internet service connection. But all of a sudden, I would be flying, but you could hear the sound of the game. The plane was crashing off into the distance. So definitely take this with a grain of salt. But all in all, especially with the GPU enhanced machine that you can set up with Paperspace, I thought it was awesome. I think it's great. So worth checking out. Like I said, I did the hourly one because the monthly one for that GPU I think is like $260 a month or something. Okay, few months and I could have my own gaming rig. But anyhow, hourly for playing games, I think it's pretty cool. So, I don't know. Let me know what's your questions, problems, suggestions, horror stories. Do you want to see me try some other cloud-based gaming solutions just to see what else is out there and how they perform with BeamNG Drive or some other game just to check that out? I don't know. Let me know down in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.